Welcome back. You're still with the India Development Debate right here on ET Now, and time to put our spotlight on the next debate this evening. Finally taking note of what the government has been calling a serious hunger problem in India that makes us the second largest malnutrition population anywhere in the world, despite us being the largest producer of food. The government today approved a long-awaited national nutrition mission with a 3-year budget target of over 9,000 crore rupees. Starting this fiscal itself, the mission will monitor, supervise, fix targets and guide nutrition-related interventions. It also aims to reduce malnutrition levels by 2 percentage points every year and will create synergy amongst existing schemes, address maternal and child undernutrition. Ironically enough though, Aadhaar will be mandatory to avail the benefits of this mission, which will do real-time monitoring and deploy the use of ICT to monitor implementation of the scheme. Will this finally address the 1/5 of Indian children under 5 who weigh too little for their height and over the third who are too short for their age? Will this finally take care of the apathy, corruption, ignorance and perhaps all of that has got us here? Nutrition for all and why it matters is a big debate on the India Development Debate this evening. And taking us through over the next half an hour is a stellar panel. I've got Braj Patnaik, Principal Advisor, Supreme Court Commissioners, Dr. Vinod Paul, Member, Niti Aayog, Preeti Sudan, Health Secretary in the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Devendra Sharma, Food and Agriculture Expert. Thanks each one of you for being with us, and it's only fair that I start with Ms. Sudan there. And Ms. Sudan, congratulations on a mission like this. I think a mission mode does take care of a lot of things. While I go across to the others, I will just quickly begin with the first question to you. And I know you're for a very short while with us, so I'm going to quickly direct my questions to you. This many believe is a good thing to happen, but could this not have been funneled through the existing schemes? The convergence that one expected, the convergence in terms of tracking and all of that, there are multiple schemes, whether it's ICDS, whether it's Sarv Shiksha, whether it's midday meal, PDS. Could all of this not come together for a mission mode like this?
One thing that stands out is that this is talking about convergence, number one, and this is also talking about very detailed online real-time tracking. I think this is the first time that I would say a comprehensive look has been taken towards this problem of nutrition. I would say malnutrition, undernutrition and nutrition of all types. So therefore, I would really suggest that you go through the document very carefully and you will understand that the seriousness of the situation is reflected in the government's approval to the nutrition endeavor of the government in a mission mode. So I think it's a great document and I think it's a great step forward.
No, there is no doubt this is a good thing forward. This is a great document. What I'm also trying to get to is when I talk about convergence, ma'am, you have included women and child development and family welfare and health under this. What about drinking water and sanitation? Because those are also big causes of malnutrition. The fact that sanitation and open defecation does lead to diarrhea and that in turn leads to malnutrition is known. So if you could answer my second question before I move forward with the rest of my panel right here.
I absolutely agree with you. So if you again go through the National Nutrition Mission guidelines and what will come forward as the activities to be taken under this, you will realize that Swachhta is a very, very big part of the nutrition mission. Without that, anything that we do will not be sustainable. You see, it is part of the promotive as well as the preventive strategy. So I think you are on point saying that Swachhta is and it is already an integral part of the mission.
All right, let me take this across to Dr. Vinod Paul, Member Niti Aayog, who joins us right here. Somebody who's a specialist in this, has spoken about this extensively. Dr. Paul, I do want to pick your brains on the question that I put forward to Ms. Sudan, the Health and Family Welfare Secretary, on this being a mission statement, this being a mission mode. It's all very good. But, you know, many people believe that it is perhaps not as encompassing as the National Rural Health Mission is. What would you say to critics of that nature, to critics who are making that argument, that could this perhaps have been maybe not critics, but people who are making that argument, could this have been a little more encompassing, so to say?
I think in principle it is truly encompassing, because the cardinal principle of the mission is convergence, and the convergence mechanism brings together different players and different agencies and different interventions and different types of action together. Convergence has been relatively soft in our previous endeavor, and this is the huge correction being made under the National Nutrition Mission. And convergence not just at the national or the state level, but even more so at the block and the district level and at the village level. And the integration of health, integration of nutrition, integration of Swachh Abhiyan, drinking water, and working together with the Panchayati Raj institutions and the civil society are a part of this. We believe that nutrition is not only about food, it is about health, it is about protection against diarrheal diseases, it is the care of the mother, care of adolescent girl, it is about breastfeeding, and it is about immunization. So, all that is now for the first time coming together in a very synthesized, in a very integrated fashion, and I think we should be proud of the approach that has been taken, and the principle of convergence brings together the might within the National Nutrition Mission at all levels.
Mr. Patnaik, let me come to you. You know, this is a fair argument that this is happening at the district absolute small level, and the fact that this is funneling in a lot together. This is leading to a lot of convergence. The fact that two ministries have come together and going forward, like Ms. Sudan is pointing out there, we may have drinking water and sanitation as well. This is perhaps the right way to go forward, is it not?
Well, I think in terms of the intent, there is no doubt that this has been, the nutrition mission is something that has been spoken about, and various drafts have gone around government for the last 5 years, if not longer. So in terms of intent, I'd absolutely agree with it. It's a well-intentioned document. It makes a lot of right noises about governance that, I mean, I no longer work with the Supreme Court Commissioner's Office, but as a right to food activist, I can say that many of the things that we have been demanding and speaking about for a long time find reflection in this document. So to that extent, of course, it's positive. But the reality also is that the money to make this happen is not backed up. In conception and vision, it's very similar to the National Rural Health Mission, which is now the National Health Mission. But the entire idea when this was thought of was to have a mechanism very similar to the NRHM, and therefore at that point in time, the financial projections that we had made for the Planning Commission factored that in. The reality is this is just 9,000 crores. So if you divide it by the number of states, or you divide it by the number of districts or the number of blocks or villages, it doesn't come too much, even for coordination. I mean, 9,000 crores may sound a lot for achieving convergence, but in a country as large as India, the budget is low. Second, no convergence will be meaningful till the basic structural design flaws which you have in the schemes themselves are addressed. You can converge as much as you like, but if your entire focus of ICDS is between the age of 3 to 6, and whereas we know malnutrition, the first 1,000 days are important, and you don't have a program that addresses that, it's not going to work. If you have a public distribution system that doesn't take into account local food preferences, has a contractor Raj, as is, it's one of the most corrupt ministries in the country, completely run by contractors in a sense, food not reaching the children because of all these governance issues, it's not going to work. So convergence is only going to be as good as the sum total of the schemes that are in existence and the budgetary support that is being provided to the schemes. Now, the NDA government unfortunately has had a very severe round of cuts in every single budget that the finance minister has presented in all these centrally sponsored schemes, particularly those affecting health and nutrition. Now, if money there is not available and you try to do convergence or try to bring down malnutrition rather,
right,
using a fiscal neutral approach, that's not going to work as well. So in terms of intent, full marks.
Okay.
In terms of practicality, I think a long journey ahead.
Okay, I do want to take this forward with Devendra Sharma, but before I do that, Ms. Sudan has to leave early, so I'm going to take a quick question on the point that you just made, which is about funding of the mission. And Ms. Sudan, you know, Mr. Patnaik makes this point that at 9,000 crore rupees, how much money are you really looking at over the next 3 years? Doesn't really amount to much. Do you agree that this is an underfunded scheme with all good marks to intention?
I think the finance minister, the WCD minister and health minister have together held a press conference at about 12:30. I think the three coming together is an indication that ample funds and funds as per requirement will be provided to the mission, and it is being steered by the Ministry of Women and Child Development. So this question is better asked there, but in my view, I am sure that there will be no issue of funding. It is our intent, and we request you also to partner with us, because what is required is awareness and advocacy, and you are the best people to also talk about nutrition and its various aspects.
No, absolutely. There's no denying that, and we'd like to play a part in that. But Devendra Sharma, coming on the point that Mr. Patnaik has made and the point that Ms. Sudan has responded to, and I'm going to then take forward the decentralized nature of what the mission would want to do. You know, the fact that funding perhaps could be an issue going forward, and the sum total of schemes really matters. You know, the convergence at this level perhaps is as good as the scheme is. He's right in pointing out that, you know, a scheme like ICDS targets 4 to 6. We do know what happens in the first 1,000 days in a child's life. So I'm just trying to pick your brains first on this going forward, the funding of the mission and the convergence.
Well, I think first of all, as everybody would agree that this is a good intent, and the government has to be acknowledged and appreciated for bringing out a mission approach on this particular aspect, which is very, very serious for India's growth. Having said that, it is okay to talk about convergence, but convergence without including agriculture is not going to work. Let's be very clear that malnutrition or undernourishment is basically hidden hunger, and hidden hunger cannot be addressed till you address the issue of hunger. Now, hunger cannot be addressed till you address the issue of food security. Now, the problem in this country is that there's so much of food insecurity in this country that unless you link it up with malnutrition and nutrition, you are not going to achieve results. Even if you are going online and keep on tracking these people and have an Aadhaar card, that's not going to work till you are able to link up agriculture with these nutrition schemes. Now, that I don't see any indication coming forward that that's going to happen. Having said that, why I am concerned about it is a recent Harvard study has very clearly brought out that investing in agriculture is 5 times more effective in reducing hunger and malnutrition than investing in urban infrastructure. Now, that's a study produced by the Harvard University, and unfortunately in India we are following we are going in the opposite direction. We are not investing in agriculture, we are reducing investment in agriculture year after year, and whereas the investments on urban infrastructure is increasing. So I think we need to draw a line what exactly is required for the country. It can't be done the way I think you are trying to make a online kind of a picture that tracking would be very effective. I think this has all been done a number of times, and this is not going to be really very helpful. Now, the convergence, yes, it is required, but convergence without agriculture, without building agriculture, what is said local production, local procurement and local distribution is what is required, and unless we do that, I see this is going to be a very big challenge whether we are going to achieve the issue of, or the point that Prime Minister has been saying he wants to remove hunger by the year 2022.
Right.
Now, that's a tall order. It is possible, but unless you are able to link it together.
Right. Kuposhan Mukt Bharat is what the Prime Minister is talking about. Dr. Paul, if I may bring this to you, convergence without agriculture is the point Mr. Devendra Sharma is making. What will this really amount to? That's his big angst. And of course, I mean, there is no denying the fact that agriculture hasn't done well for the past many quarters. We've just seen growth rates of 1.7% in the second quarter. But those statistics set aside, the fact that agriculture is not a part of this convergence.
No, it's the point about agriculture being a part of the wider agenda to address hunger and nutrition is absolutely valid. The issue is that we are a food surplus country, and the mission would work within and linked up to the food security bill. It's linked to the provisions of the food security bill. It should be seen in totality, and therefore, while it's valid that the convergence should expand to agriculture in the wider sense, that point is well taken, no denying about it. But the immediate convergence, which is for more proximate conditions that lead to undernutrition, rest on health, nutrition, Swachh, and of course community involvement. The Honorable Prime Minister would like to see this mission as a Jan Andolan, a people's movement to make a change, and that is another important and integral part of the mission. I also would like to add that there was a talk about design faults within the mission. I must point out that a very important design fault has been corrected now. After first 6 months of exclusive breastfeeding, the infants have to shift to semi-solid feeds. We call them complementary feeding. The adequacy of complementary feeding 6 months onwards has been an issue. Only 10% of children between 6 months to 24 months of age receive adequate food. The problem was that at about 4 to 6 months, when the transition happens, when the food is to be introduced, the child is also vulnerable to get diarrhea because he is moving about. This phase was left uncovered so far, or was not covered optimally. We have made a design change now, and it is now a decision that from 4 months onwards, every 2 months or so, there will be a home based contact by the ASHA worker, where health department comes in to play the role to promote health as well as nutrition up to the age of 14 to 15 months. This correction could be the game changer and should be the game changer, because that is where we start to falter. And having corrected this as a part of this mission is a very important way forward. Likewise, prevention of diarrheal disease through Swachh interventions should make a difference. 15% of stunting could be attributable to unsanitary conditions. And last but not the least, what part of the strategy is also to scale up rotavirus vaccine to prevent diarrhea in high burden states where the stunting rates are particularly high. So in totality, the resources are coming from many directions, and we may also point out that very recently the budget for the take home rations and other food supplements has also been escalated very recently. So there are resources coming from very many directions. The point about wider convergence is valid, but there is a lot to look forward to.
Okay, Dr. Paul, you made a very valid point there, and I have very little time left on the show, but I'll go across to Mr. Patnaik there. And Mr. Patnaik, I think, very often we criticize anything that's being monitored real time. We believe, it's still one of those things. But in this case, a real time monitoring will perhaps help in better targeted action. At least that's what the government would want us to believe, that lack of real time determinants do not lead to targeted action. This will you concede the fact that this is important, especially because it's done at a district level, it's being done with local resources at a local level, targeting first the most severely hit districts and then of course to the rest of India?
Yeah, no, I think there's no doubt about it that real-time monitoring is important. The problem is when you begin to think that technology can be a substitute for good governance. So you can monitor real time, but there is very little to monitor in terms of positive change if your instruments that you are using for that monitoring are deliberately exclusionary in nature. Now, for instance, today there's been an announcement that all of this will be done through Aadhaar. Now, unfortunately, and I'm a great votary of technology, but I cannot support, for instance, the use of Aadhaar, which is the subject matter of so much litigation in the courts, to monitor feeding for children. I mean, if a child doesn't have an Aadhaar card, are you going to deny them midday meals at the school? Or if their biometrics are not being read, are you going to send them back hungry? I think let us not confuse real-time monitoring with something like getting Aadhaar as a one-stop shop solution for all of this. Aadhaar has its uses perhaps, but certainly monitoring of food for children is not one of those uses. Now, but I do want to say to Dr. Paul that look, I think what Devinder was mentioning on agriculture, was not about what is there in the Food Security Act. I was one of the people who was involved in the drafting and the lobbying and the advocacy of the Food Security Act, as Dr. Paul knows. And I can tell you that it is a Food Security Act, it's a Food Entitlement Act, it has nothing on agriculture. So convergence with the National Food Security Act is not going to deliver the agenda of agriculture, particularly of local production, procurement, support to farmers, not just through a minimum support price, but through other mechanisms. And therefore, I think there is a huge gap. Let us acknowledge the gap. Let's work towards bridging the gap. Let's not deny it. And just one last point, I think that convergence, if India had to learn its lesson, it should have just turned to Brazil, because that's really where they have cracked it. It's been an effective platform. And if you keep the Brazilian program and the Indian Nutrition Mission documents together, you'll see there's absolutely no link between the two.
Okay, I get your point, and I think Dr. Paul doesn't disagree with the fact that agriculture needs to converge with this. But the point that you largely made about Aadhaar, and I think Ms. Susan is going to leave after this question, she has to go, is about Aadhaar, ma'am. And some questions have been raised, some doubts have been raised of whether Aadhaar can be linked to a system like this. Can Aadhaar perhaps be the antibiotic to malnutrition?
You must tell me, in any of the schemes of government, are entitlements being denied because of Aadhaar? I think I would answer this question of yours by a counter question. I mean, that's all I would say. There's no question of denying anybody. There's just no question of denying anybody. When we are taking up a issue on mission basis, obviously the intent is so much clear that nobody will be denied, and these are only procedural issues which can be corrected, which can be adopted, which can be tweaked, and I'm sure that the Ministry of Women and Child Development will be doing so as they go by this, as they roll out the National Nutrition Mission.
I'll actually let Dr. Paul have the last word, but before that, I'll go across to Mr. Sharma. And Mr. Devendra Sharma, it's all very good to say that nobody is being denied Aadhaar, but we do see stray cases where Aadhaar does become an impediment. I mean, a child dies and Aadhaar is, because he did not have Aadhaar. Biraj Patnaik raises a very valid point. Are you going to turn a child away from a midday meal because his fingerprints did not match? In that sense, can technology, instead of being the facilitator, be the big hurdle here? And should the government at all be justified in linking Aadhaar to something as important as this? And I'm not talking out of my hat. I mean, look at the figures. Children under 5 years of age, 38.7% are stunted, 15.1% are wasted, 70% women in a state like Jharkhand are severely anemic. That's the state of our country.
Well, I think there's no denying. We have seen reports, news reports coming out saying how people have died because they didn't have the Aadhaar card, and the government did deny them the rations, and this is known. And there's these stray cases that we know. I don't know how many others we don't know about. And I think this is, I don't think this is really right to link it up with Aadhaar. This is completely something which is unjustified, and I think should not be done. But having said that, let's also not forget there used to be something called as a National Nutritional Monitoring Bureau. Now, that has been disbanded in 2015. That was the bureau that was assessing, finding out the state of malnutrition or undernourishment in this country once in 10 years. Now, that has been disbanded because you don't want to know what is the real position. Now, that I am shocked because this bureau has told us very clearly that today, 40 years later, after the situation is that people are eating less than what they used to eat 40 years back. Now, if that is the situation in rural India, I think it's a cause for worry, and we need to bring back these monitoring bureaus to really assess as to what is the situation on the ground level. We just can't go by online tracking. I think online tracking is a kind of thinking that everyone wants, because it's very easy to do it sitting in their office. They don't want to go into rural areas and see for themselves as what the reality is. So it's very disappointing the kind of
Okay,
situation
okay.
that exists in this country.
Mr.
And as I said earlier, agriculture,
Okay,
because these
Mr.
people are
Sharma,
hungry,
I'm running
because
out of time here.
as been said earlier, you have not
Mr. Sharma, I'm running out
deliberately
of
not
time
linked
here. I will
agriculture.
have to go to Dr. Paul. I have to go to Dr. Paul. Cut his audio. I have to go to Dr. Paul, and Dr. Paul, I'll give you the last word and show what the point that Mr. Sharma makes. It's good to use technology, but technology cannot be the antidote to some of our problems. I mean, you know, an Aadhaar cannot be an antibiotic for malnutrition. Just like this, real-time monitoring cannot be the substitution for a National Nutrition Monitoring Bureau.
To be able to reach the beneficiaries, and Aadhaar is meant to achieve goals of reducing the leaks within the system. We can talk about it, but we cannot throw the baby with the bathwater. Having said that, the point being made about knowing data objectively, not necessarily only through the program information systems, is a very important part of the National Nutrition Mission. We are hoping that there will be annual surveys. We are hoping that there will be a clutch of studies to go concurrently to be able to inform us how the food is consumed, how children are benefited. So the whole intent to bring live data and information from the ground, in addition to the online information from the program that has been talked about, is an integral part. And for this, a system has been created or will be created at Niti Aayog. And that technical hub will provide the kind of information that we are talking about, and there should be and will be annual surveys to inform the progress of the program, as well as outcome variables, not so much set apart as the NFHS normally does, 5 to 10 years apart, but there will be much more information from the ground level available to guide this mission, and that is a very important another pillar of this particular mission that we are proud of.
Right. On that note, I think I've completely run out of time here, but thank you very, very much, Dr. Vinod Paul, Ms. Preeti Sudan, Mr. Biraj Patnaik, and Mr. Devinder Sharma for sharing your views on what we really believe is a very, very important day as far as India is concerned. 38.7% of our children are stunted. India cannot afford to develop without those children being developed. India cannot afford to rise till we bring our children up and healthy. But on that note, completely out of time on this edition of the India Development Debate. Thank you very much for tuning in. Up next is Top 10 at 10.